live next to a man who would seriously consider investing in oil fields and gold mines. And you are a doctor, a man who knows the stupidity of most things. Well, we are neighbours. Please, you must give your excellent sister my best marrow." He bent down, picked up a huge marrow, and gave it to me. "Indeed," said the little man cheerfully, "this has not been a wasted morning. I have met a man who in some ways resembles my old friend. By the way, you must know everyone in this village. Who is the young man with the very dark hair and eyes and the handsome face?" "Captain Ralph Peyton," I said. "He is the stepson of Mr. Ackroyd of Fernley Park." "I should have guessed. Mr. Ackroyd spoke of him many times." "You know Mr. Ackroyd?" I asked, surprised. "Mr. Ackroyd knew me in London when I worked there. I have asked him to say nothing of my profession down here. I have not even tried to correct the way the local people pronounce my name. So, Captain Ralph Peyton, and he is engaged to the beautiful Miss Flora." "Who told you so?" "Mr. Ackroyd. He put some pressure on the young man. That is never wise. A young man should marry to please himself, not to please a stepfather, even though he expects to inherit a great deal of money from him." I was confused. I could not imagine Ackroyd discussing the marriage with a hairdresser. At that moment, my sister called me from the house. I went in. Caroline had just come back from the village. She began talking immediately. "I met Mr. Ackroyd, and I asked him about Ralph. He was astonished. He had no idea the boy was down here. Then he went on to tell me that Ralph and Flora are engaged, and I told him that Ralph was staying at the Three Boars." "Caroline," I said, "do you never think that you might do harm by repeating everything you hear?" "Nonsense. People should know things. I think Mr. Ackroyd went straight to the Three Boars, but if so, he didn't find Ralph there, because as I was coming through the woods—" "Coming through the woods?" I interrupted. "It was such a lovely day. The autumn colours are so perfect at this time of year." Caroline does not like woods at any time of year, but our local woods are the only place where you can talk with a young woman unseen by the whole village. "Anyway, I heard voices. One was Ralph Peyton's. The other was a girl's. She said something I didn't hear, and Ralph answered very angrily. 'My dear girl,' he said, 'the old man will disinherit me, which means I'll be very, very poor. If he doesn't, I will be a very, very rich man when he dies. So I don't want him to change his will. You leave it to me and don't worry.' Unfortunately, just then I stepped on a piece of wood which broke and made a noise, and they moved away. So I wasn't able to see who the girl was. Who could it have been?" I made an excuse about a patient and went out, but I went straight to the Three Boars. Ralph had not inherited his mother's addiction to alcohol, but he was self-indulgent and extravagant. Nevertheless, his friends were all devoted to him. At the Three Boars, I was told that Captain Peyton had just come in. I went up to his room. "Why, it's Shepherd, the one person I'm glad to see in this place. Have a drink, won't you?" "Thanks," I said. I will." He pressed the bell, then sat down with a sigh. "I'm in a complete mess. I just don't know what to do next. It's my stepfather." "What has he done?" "It isn't what he's done, but what he's likely to do." "If I could help," I suggested. He shook his head. "It's good of you, Doctor, but I've got to do this on my own." Chapter 4. Dinner at Fernley. As Parker, the Fernley Park butler, took my coat, Ackroyd's secretary, a pleasant young man called Geoffrey Raymond, passed through the hall on his way to Ackroyd's study, with his hands full of business documents. "Good evening, Doctor. Coming to dine? Or is this a professional call?" This referred to my black bag, which I had put down on the oak table. I explained that I expected to be called to deliver a baby at any moment. Raymond went on his way, saying, "Go into the drawing-room. I'll tell Mr. Ackroyd you're here." I noticed, just as I was turning the handle of the drawing-room door, a sound from inside, like the shutting down of a sash window. As I walked in, Miss Russell, Ackroyd's housekeeper, was just coming out. What a good-looking woman she was. "I'm afraid I'm early," I said. "Oh, I don't think so. It's gone 7:30, Dr. Shepherd. But I must be going. I only came in to see if the flowers were all right." She went, and I saw, of course, what I had forgotten, that the windows were long French ones opening on the terrace, so that could not have been the sound I heard. I noticed the silver table, which displays silver and other valuable items. Its glass top lifts, and inside, as I knew from other visits, were 1 or 2 pieces of old silver, a baby shoe which had belonged to King Charles I, and a number of African pieces. Wanting to examine one of the figures more closely, I lifted the lid. It slipped through my fingers and fell. The sound I had heard was this lid being shut down. I was still bending over the silver table when Flora Ackroyd came in. Nobody can help admiring her. She has pale gold hair, her eyes are the deepest blue, and her skin is the colour of cream and roses. "Congratulate me, Dr. Shepherd," said Flora. She held out her left hand. On the third finger was a beautiful single pearl ring. "I'm going to marry Ralph. Uncle is very pleased." I took both her hands in mine. "My dear," I said, "I hope you'll be very happy." "We've been engaged for about a month," continued Flora, "but it was only announced yesterday. Uncle is going to do up Crossstones and give it to us to live in, and we're going to pretend to farm. Really, we shall hunt all the winter and go to London for the season." Just then, the widowed Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd came in. I am sorry to say I cannot stand Mrs. Ackroyd. She is all teeth and bones, with small, pale blue eyes, and however friendly her words may be, her eyes always remain coldly calculating. Had I heard about Flora's engagement, she wondered. Mrs. Ackroyd was interrupted as the drawing-room door opened once more.
"You know Major Blunt, don't you, Doctor?"
"Yes, indeed." Hector Blunt has shot more wild animals in Africa and India than any man living, and every 2 years he spends a fortnight at Fernley. A man of medium height and well built, Blunt's face is deeply sun-tanned and strangely expressionless. He is